Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Commander Pod, your Magic the Gathering podcast for all things Commander. I'm Spencer Simpson.
And I'm Kelton Howell. We have another awesome episode this week. This was a request that came in from a viewer, Robin Timler228. He requested, I would like to see an episode about some commanders that can introduce someone into high power or even cEDH. And this is actually an episode that we've been wanting to do for a while. Spencer has been on a journey into cEDH, and so it's something that we wanted to talk about. So we're really glad that someone commented and asked for that topic.
Yeah, I should caveat and say that I'm not so deep into that journey yet. Like, I've not played in any tournaments or anything, but it is something that I wanted to do. I was watching a lot of cEDH content for a while, and we have talked about this as far as like wanting to play more powerful cards and more powerful formats. But as our playgroup was not wanting to play at a higher power level, I kind of was having this weird split, this dichotomy in my brain of I want to play these new powerful cards, but I also can't put them in my casual decks. And as I was listening to Play to Win, who we're going to mention again today, who are awesome, they had talked about how they play casual. And they had talked about that they explicitly don't play cards that are like cEDH viable cards. But they do that because they play so much cEDH, and it all of a sudden clicked for me, and I thought, I should play some cEDH, get this out of my system so that I feel okay when I'm playing casual, so that I can not play those more powerful cards in casual.
Yeah, you sent me that video a while ago from Play to Win, and I really liked it because they talk about how casual is an opportunity for them to play cards that they don't normally get to play in cEDH. So it's all the fun, casual cards that they want to be playing, and they don't get an opportunity to. And that, I think, is a perfect dichotomy between cEDH and casual Commander, is the types of cards that you play and the decks that you play are just very different, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. And if you mostly played casual, like lower power casual especially, like you got in a pre-con or you just play casual with your friends, some kitchen table Magic, it can be really hard to distinguish sometimes cEDH and high power casual. And that's something they do very well in that Play to Win podcast, is they say, well, casual is expressly everything not in cEDH. Mm-hmm. But as you get to higher power casual, you do start to play a lot of these cards that are extremely powerful and do see play in cEDH. Yeah. Maybe not all of them, but a fair amount of them. And so it is easy to conflate the formats because we have, both formats, they're both Commander, right? They have the same ban list. They have the same rule set. It's just that you are playing, I guess, with a different intent in cEDH than you are in high power.
Yeah, I think that's a conversation that we had a lot of times early on in our play group was, oh, that deck's too powerful, and it would get labeled as cEDH. And
yeah, or that's a cEDH card.
Yeah, and I just don't think we had a good enough understanding of what cEDH actually was and what high power casual actually looked like. But now, I've played a couple of games of cEDH. You've played several dozen. You are on that journey, even if you feel like you're at the beginning of it. Like, you have played a lot of cEDH. You've also spent a lot of time studying the meta of cEDH, so you know all the cards and combos and decks. And that's one big difference between cEDH and casual, is that there is a meta.
Yeah, for sure. There is a meta. And casual, you're just bringing whatever deck you've brewed and playing it against everyone else's. Yeah. And I think, like I said, intent, I think, is a really big thing in both your play and your deck building that can distinguish the two formats, because you are playing a lot of the similar cards. So with cEDH, the intent is win at all costs, right? That's the rule zero conversation is skipped because everyone is trying to play their most powerful deck.
Yeah, it plays much more like a traditional constructed format. It's not like you would come to a standard night and be like, oh, this is a low power standard deck. There's no such thing. It's whatever is the most powerful meta in standard. That's what you're trying to play in order to have the highest win percentage. And that's the same thing as cEDH.
Yeah, for sure. And because it's a multiplayer format and there is like the casual version of that, it is really easy to conflate, but you are just trying to win at all costs. Yep. You are playing the most efficient commanders for the most part. Yeah. There are some, you can build cEDH decks with a lot of commanders, but they're not going to be top tier cEDH decks. And some of them
because you're denying yourself some of the most efficient cards in the command zone. And so if you're just playing an off-meta cEDH deck, it's kind of like you're playing one card down for a lot of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. One card down, and one card down that is in your hand at all times. Like, you could build... I guess feasibly you could build a cEDH deck with some random legend, right, from Legends.
Yeah.
But, that's not going to be... I mean, cEDH does rely on the 99 a ton, but they rely on the 99 in conjunction with a powerful commander that either has like some sort of card advantage or combo potential or something along those lines in the command zone. Whereas high power casual is you are typically optimizing your deck, so still trying to build a very powerful deck, but within a given theme or are building around your commander in such a way that you're playing the most powerful effects in that theme.
Yeah, and so the deck can scale, right? So you have like a theme or a commander that you're building around, and so if you have lower power cards in that deck, then it might be a more casual, lower power casual commander deck. Whereas if you have higher power cards, now it's a high power casual commander deck, and it still fits around that theme. It just changes the types of cards that you're playing in it.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I guess a good example would be we have a friend who plays an Dragon deck, and he plays Rhystic Study and Smothering Tithe in that deck. He started to acquire a lot of things. We rule 0 in fetch lands and shock lands, so his mana fixing is quite good. It's turning into a very high power casual deck.
Yeah.
It will never be a cEDH viable deck because the Dragon costs like 8 mana, right? Like
And it's just not doing cEDH things, right?
Right.
cEDH is defined by a meta of combo lines that are trying to win you the game, and that deck just doesn't naturally want to play those lines.
Yeah, even if you wanted to put combos in there, because it is 5 colors, like you could, he would be better off switching it out for another 5 color commander, and like that is more, cEDH
so
viable.
I actually have a deck that I think is a really good example of this, and it is the First Sliver. So the First Sliver is a sliver. It's Wooburg, so it's one of each color of mana. That's what it costs. It's a 7/7 sliver, and it has Cascade, which is when you cast this spell, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card that costs less. You can cast it without paying its mana cost. Then you put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And the sliver spells you have Cascade. So I have this as a casual deck. It's probably mid-high is how I would classify the power level of my First Sliver deck. And it's a sliver deck. It has 31 slivers in it and other shapeshifters that count as slivers, because what I'm trying to do is just play as many slivers as possible to cascade into more slivers that cascade into more slivers. And it makes it a pretty powerful deck. That's just a very powerful effect on a commander. And so it kind of plays at like a mid-high power level deck. The First Sliver is also a viable cEDH commander. There are cEDH decks around this. I looked up a deck list. Guess how many slivers it has in the deck?
The First Sliver?
It has the First Sliver. That is the only sliver in the deck, right? And it's because it's just trying to do something completely different, where a casual version of the First Sliver is just trying to play slivers because it's a sliver deck and that's how those work. The First Sliver as a cEDH deck is a food chain deck. And so the way food chain works is food chain is an enchantment that lets you sacrifice creatures for mana. And then you have creatures that you can cast from exile. And so you loop those creatures and re-sacrifice them and recast them, netting yourself mana each time until you have an infinite amount of mana. And then you're able to sacrifice and cast the First Sliver from the command zone an infinite number of times.
Yeah.
And since it has Cascade, it lets you cast your whole deck and win the game. And so that's how that deck wins in cEDH, and it only has one sliver in it. So for me, that's a really good example of cEDH versus high power casual. cEDH has certain lines that it's trying to play, not necessarily around a theme, while the high power casual deck has more of a theme that it's trying to build around and win within that theme.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a perfect synopsis of that. No, I mean I seriously mean that, because like you said, it is trying to build around a theme and build around your commander, and I think that is, you hit the nail exactly on the head.
No, thank you.
So with that out of the way, well, I guess we should also define. We have some things in our playgroup that we do that help us distinguish cEDH and high power as well, right? Which is some of the same things we've talked about, right? We play around some sort of theme. We typically avoid playing the most efficient combos like Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation, a very common combo. I guess I should read those for those that are unaware.
Yeah, that's a good combo to explain, because it's one that I think is very popular in the cEDH meta right now, correct?
Yeah, it is like the premier
The combo.
Yeah, I mean, there are other colors to be playing in cEDH, but if you're playing blue and black, you better be running this. So Thassa's Oracle is blue for a 1/3 creature merfolk wizard. And it says, when Thassa's Oracle enters the battlefield, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is your devotion to blue. put up to one of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. If X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. And that's the important line there. X will at minimum be 2, almost always, because if Thassa's Oracle is still on the battlefield. And if your library has no cards in it and Thassa's Oracle gets removed, 0 is equal to 0, so you still will win the game.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Nice.
which is a cool interaction. Please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I'm going to read the rules text right now. If your devotion to blue is 0 at the time of the trigger resolves, and you don't look at or move any cards in your library, and you have no cards in the library, you win the game. Yep, boom.
Cool. Nice.
Yep. So you do win the game with
right.
0. Yes. Yes, feels good. Here's Demonic Consultation. Demonic Consultation says, choose a card name. Exile the top 6 cards of your library, then reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a card with the chosen name. Put that card into your hand. Exile all other cards revealed this way. It is 1 black for an instant. So what you do is you play Thassa's Oracle. It enters the battlefield. Its ability goes on the stack. With its ability on the stack, you cast Demonic Consultation. You name a card that is either in your hand, you know for a fact is not in your deck, whatever. You name a card, so you exile your entire library, and then the Thassa's Oracle trigger hopefully resolves, winning you the game because you have no cards in your library.
Yep. That's a very cheap combo. It's 3 mana. It only requires 2 cards, and it's difficult to interact with because it's a triggered ability, right? It's not Thassa's Oracle is a triggered ability.
It's a triggered ability on a creature. Demonic Consultation you can't interact with.
Yeah.
Right?
That part's a lot easier.
Yeah, but it's a triggered ability on a creature, so it does make half of it more difficult to interact with. And like you said, it's 3 mana, so chances are you have additional mana held up for interaction as you're going for this win.
And let me reiterate, these are not written rules within our playgroup, and it's super dependent on our playgroup. As a playgroup, we just don't enjoy playing that combo. It feels too efficient. There's not any. It doesn't feel as satisfying for our playgroup because it's not along the themes of our decks. None of us are playing decks where that's a reasonable theme to be playing in our decks. And we just want to win other ways. And so I think when Spencer and I go and play somewhere else with other playgroups, if someone resolves this combo and wins the game, that's great. We don't have any problem with that. We're not saying this is a bad combo. We don't like to play against it or anything like that. We're just saying within our playgroup, that's part of what has become the meta for high power casual games is that's just one of the combos that we don't like to run, and that's okay. And your group can, and if we ever play with you and you run that line in your deck, totally fine. It's not going to bother us at all.
Yeah, 100%. These are mostly constraints that we have set. I would even say probably not even in our play group, but just kind of amongst the two of us as well as we've been building high power decks. It's something that I think our play group shares a lot of these sentiments, but we have explicitly talked about it together a lot because we're the ones that are typically pushing the envelope a little bit as far as
for
power
some
in our
higher
deck.
power decks. Sure.
Yeah, for sure. And the last one here is and this is again I say that because this is one that specifically Kelton and I do is we don't proxy cards that we don't own in our casual decks. That we do encourage our friends who want to build higher power decks to proxy cards they don't own. We're not telling everyone to go by Ristic Studies and Smothering Tides.
Everyone should be proxying cards.
Yeah, 100%. We just in casual have decided not to do that.
Because I want to play with the cards that I have. Because if I'm just proxying all the most powerful cards all the time, then I'm just playing a lot of the same cards. I want to be able to play some of the cool cards that I've opened or some of the jankier combos that I have. Because I think that's fun, and I want to play the cards that I own. So we encourage proxying. We're totally cool with proxying. We proxy. But for these specific decks, for a lot of our casual decks, we don't proxy because we want to play with the cards that we own, and we think that's fun.
And I would say don't proxy explicitly cards that we don't own, again, because I have a Ristic Study. I only have one Ristic Study, and I have several decks that are high enough power that it runs Ristic Study. But we're not running Alpha Duels or Moxes. Again, we have no problem with you doing that. I guess Moxes are the true Moxes are
those are banned.
But
Mox Diamond,
Mox,
I think is the one
Mox
that you're
Diamond.
talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Grim Monolith, stuff like that. Okay, now with that out of the way, we want to talk about getting into cEDH and getting into high power. We're going to start with high power and how you can get into playing high power. And then we're going to move on to talking about some commanders that you might want to try if you're trying to play high power. I will say getting into high power, I think, is actually more difficult than getting into cEDH.
I would agree. It's because that line is so blurry and it's so subjective. This is, I think, did this come from the Play to Win episode on this? The talk around Rule Zero and how cEDH practically eliminates Rule Zero, right?
Yeah, I've heard it several places. I heard it on Play to Win. In the cEDH Discord, which we'll talk about a little bit later, it does mention that as well. It kind of just is Commander maxed out, is the Rule Zero conversation kind of goes out the window.
And that's important because with a higher power casual deck, you're going to sit down at a table and you're going to be like, okay, let's talk about our decks. Let's Rule Zero, right? And my deck is high power. You know, I'd like to play a higher powered casual game. What are you all playing? Oh, yeah, my deck's higher power too. People are bad at judging their decks. There's going to be radically different power levels at that table that all think they're running higher powered decks, and that is just not going to be the case a lot of the time unless it's a play group that plays pretty regularly together.
Yeah, it's really hard to judge, and that is one thing that makes cEDH so much easier. Is you can sit down and say, "Hey, we're all playing cEDH. We're trying to win this game.
We're all playing the most busted cards because we're all trying to win. There's no worrying that my cards are more busted than your cards are because we're all playing the most busted cards."
Yeah, absolutely, and that Rule Zero conversation is something Kelton and I have thought quite a bit about and talked quite a bit about, and is something that we. Kelton mentioned this in a prior episode. We're planning on addressing at some point and talking about.
Yeah,
we're
it's just a big topic.
It's such a big topic. We're not going to talk about it today. But I think in addition to the power level discussions, and that you still have to have a Rule Zero discussion when you're playing high power, you're typically playing in person in a play group still. With cEDH, again, cEDH we're covering later, a lot of play for cEDH happens online. And so it's easy to just make yourself a deck and go find people to play with. And that's how I started doing it. It's super, super easy. Convincing your playgroup or finding people to all play similar power level decks can be really, really difficult. So that's one thing that just makes it harder. What I would recommend is talk to your playgroup, say, hey, do you guys want to play higher power levels? Encourage them to proxy. Build a deck, show them the things it does, see if they think it's cool, and see if there's something they want to do like that. We have a friend in our playgroup who has built typically lower power decks that saw some of our higher power decks that we were playing with our lower power decks at the time, which we now have changed our ways.
Yeah.
But reached out to Kelton and said, hey, this is really cool.
That was cool.
That was cool, and I want to do stuff like that. Can you help me build a deck that does stuff like that?
Yeah.
But in addition to that, I would say go to your LGS. Our LGS has Commander Nights, and they separate up pods by color. So green, yellow, orange, red. Green being like precons, yellow kind of being upgraded precons. Orange being highest power casual, and then red being like extra high power casual and cEDH. There's a little bit of muddying the waters there, and I think they could do that a little bit better.
They should just label it cEDH if they want it to be cEDH.
I think 100% they should. But again, I've shown up to these when I first was playing and said, yeah, I'm in a yellow pod. And at the time, they did only have green, yellow, red. I'm glad they've added orange since. Yeah. But I showed up to yellow pod with an upgraded precon. And
something that at the time you thought was a 7 or an 8.
Yeah, that I thought was a super powerful deck at the time. And then sat down and played and had a pretty rude awakening as I was playing against some higher power decks. So,
yep. So in reality, if you're going to build a higher power deck, there's really most any commander can still be built as a higher power deck because it mostly comes down to the 99. But some decks are just going to be stronger because they have access to a powerful effect in the command zone. So, if you're going to build a Jund deck, then Corvold is more powerful in the command zone than some other random Jund, legend.
With Corvold in the 99, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If you have access to Corvold every game, it's going to perform significantly better.
Yeah, but the reason you are going to pick Corvold for a casual deck, even if it's a higher power casual deck, is because you like the theme of Corvold. You like what Corvold's doing, and you want to do that thing. And if you want to build what's the one that you built recently? It's Slimefoot and Squee. That if you want to just be doing Slimefoot and Squee things, you can also make that a higher power deck, and it's awesome. So you should be picking your commander based on the thing you want to be doing for a high power casual deck, not just based on the power of the commander.
Yes, that's absolutely true. That is a very good point. I have built a Slimefoot and Squee. I haven't built it, but I've theory crafted a Slimefoot and Squee deck.
We've play tested it a lot.
And we've play tested it, and it did pretty well. And it has Corvold in the 99, but that's because I like Reanimator stuff, and I wanted to do that more than I wanted to do generic
stuff.
treasure Corvold stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
One thing I wanted to say, and we've talked about this a little bit, and I have kind of backed off on, is staying away from cEDH viable commanders. I've kind of changed my tune on that a little bit.
Sure.
But I do think there are some commanders that kind of have these magnetic poles of power levels that they want to be at. One we talked about that you had kind of built was Ukima and Kazure, right? Who we'll put them up on screen here. Should we read them really quick?
Yeah, let me go ahead and read them really quick because I love these commanders. Okay. So I definitely want to talk about it. So Ukima Stalking Shadow is 1 blue-black for a 2/2 Whale Wolf. First off, how cool is that? That's one of the reasons you should be playing this commander.
Pretty sweet.
It has partner with Kazure. Actually, I think we've talked about this in another episode.
We have.
Ukima Stalking Shadow can't be blocked, so it's a 2/2 unblockable, and then when it leaves the battlefield, it deals X damage to target player, and you gain X life where X is its power. So it's an unblockable creature that you're trying to buff, and so then when it dies, you get to drain someone for a bunch of life. It partners with Kazure, who is a 3 and a green 3/3 human warrior that has whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you put a 1/1 counter on that creature. So it buffs Ukima just right out of the command zone, which is awesome. Once again, this is very similar to the first sliver in that it has a cEDH counterpart that is just food chain because it's trying to loop Ukima out of the command zone and drain everybody for infinite life, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually very similar to the first sliver in that this one is kind of as a casual deck and as even a high power casual deck, it's trying to be like this unblockable tribal 1/1 counters deck. And that's a really fun deck. I've built this deck. I love it. It's super cool. The cEDH version is completely different. It's just trying to loop Ukima out of the command zone with food chain.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't built Ukima and Kazure, so I'm not exactly sure, but it feels to me like a deck that is the 1/1 counters is like not particularly high power. It's like mid power maybe of a deck to build Ukima and Kazure, especially if you're utilizing Kazure a bunch because but the cEDH deck is like not a top 2 cEDH deck, but it is like cEDH viable, quite good using food chain lines. As you move from the 1/1 counters towards trying to build Kazure higher and higher and higher power, I feel like you kind of get pulled away from the +1/+1 counters and pulled more towards the food chain combo stuff and towards cEDH.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing I think especially with higher power commanders, it is, if you were playing one that is cEDH viable, you can kind of get magnetized that direction. I felt that way with Azami Lady of Scrolls, which is, I'll read her because I think she's sweet. Azami Lady of Scrolls is 2 blue for a 0/2 legendary creature human wizard. It says tap and untap wizard you control, draw a card. Mm-hmm. So it's mono blue wizard typal. Control. And you run like extra turn spells, and there's an infinite combo with Mind Over Matter. I'll read Mind Over Matter really quick.
I actually don't know that one. I forgot that one because I haven't played against this deck in a while.
Awesome. It's 2 blue. It's on the reserve list, so it's like kind of expensive. For an enchantment. So 6 total mana for enchantment. Choose and discard a card. Tap or untap target artifact, creature, or land. So you just get to, with Azami and Mind Over Matter, you just get to tap Azami and draw through your whole deck. Cool. Yeah, so you have like a lab man or whatever, laboratory maniac, which is when you draw in an empty library, you win the game. Yeah, exactly. As I was building this as a high power deck, it was a cEDH deck missing like a couple pieces. Like I started getting pulled towards that direction, and that is partially because it's a monocolor. But I do feel like you don't have to be particularly careful, but that's one thing to like watch out for is that you start getting away from theme and more towards like.
Yeah, I like what you're saying because I do not think that every commander can be equally built at every power level. I think some commanders work better at low, some at mid, and some at high power in casual. Then there are also some commanders that can also be built at a cEDH level. And sometimes if it's a commander that works both well as a high power deck and as a cEDH level deck, that line becomes very blurry. You're right. Yes. And I think Azami was a really good example of that. Having played against Azami.
It definitely did. The line started getting very, very blurry, and we're not saying that you shouldn't do that, but what we are saying is that does happen, and can happen, and it may not be performing the way that you want it to, at a high power table or even like a mid to high power table if it's being pushed that cEDH direction.
Yep.
Some of our high power decks that we've built, what my favorite one that I built, it's currently my only really, and I just said I have a zombie, which I also have a zombie, but this is the one but a zombie is now cEDH. Like I said, it's basically cEDH, and I have other cEDH decks that I'd rather play.
Yeah.
Is my Garth One Eye deck. And I want to talk about it just because
You should talk about it. It's a cool card. This is just one of the most flavorful cards I feel like you can have in the command zone.
It's so cool. And okay, I'm gonna really quickly share some very personal information with everybody. You may have noticed that this eye right here is a little bit lazy. It's because it's a prosthetic. So I have one eye. And so this one is just like so flavorful for me specifically to play as the commander. I just think he's so cool.
Cool.
And the art is so sick. And for my birthday a couple of years ago, Kelton got me, or it might have been for Christmas. It was for my birthday, I think. Though.
I think it was for your birthday.
I think it was for my birthday. He got me a frame with every printing of Garth One Eye in the 5 different slots of the frame. It's going to be hanging up back here soon.
Oh, yeah, that'd be sweet.
It's so sweet. And then he also did a custom altar for me where he took gold, not gold leaf, but it was like gold, like stickers. And he put it, if you're looking at the art right now, all over the gold trimmings around the stained glass. Put it on Garth's eye that has the magical stuff coming off.
It turned out cool. We saw one that was similar to it on Reddit, and we thought it was a really cool idea. So
it was so cool. It was the nicest thing. It is my favorite deck to play. Garth One Eye is Wooburg, so white, blue, black, red, green for a 5/5 legendary creature human wizard, and he has tap. Choose a card name that hasn't been chosen from among Disenchant, Brain Geyser, Terror, Sheevan Dragon, Regrowth, and Black Lotus. Create a copy of the card with the chosen name. You may cast the copy. You still pay its costs. So you only get to do one of these each time. Like each of these once for each time he's on the battlefield.
Yep.
But it's cool because you have access to like Disenchant and Terror, which are really good removal spells, right? You have Regrowth, which gets you something back from your graveyard. You have
Black Lotus.
You have notably Black Lotus, which is a free ramp spell that pays for 3 mana of any color, right?
That's really good.
He's really, really cool. And he is really high power. He has like 7 different combo lines that you can go through to try to win the game. So it's kind of a controlling combo-y deck built around Garth. But the theme of it is like tapping and untapping. There's a lot of tapping and untap effects.
Because you want to be able to use more than one Garth activation in a turn.
Exactly, with like a little bit of a Blink sub-theme. So it plays a lot of really powerful stuff. This is far and away my most powerful casual deck, and it's really, really fun. I don't know it is one that I would recommend to new players, but it is really cool. I'll put it on the Mox field and put a little primer on it. I really like this one a lot.
Yeah, that one's really cool. And when I play against it, it doesn't feel like a cEDH deck because it's not just running every line in Wooburg in the colors that it can run. It's running untap lines, which is really cool because that's the theme of the deck is untapping. So it's got other things that synergize with untapping, and it's really cool to see that engine running and just cards tapping and untapping and tapping and untapping, producing different effects, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah, it's just trying to do the like we're saying the most powerful thing in that theme, and so it's the type of thing that I've always wanted to do in Commander, which is spin my wheels a little bit.
Take a lot of game actions?
Yes, yeah, exactly. but break stuff. You know what I mean? Like break the tapping and untapping and get actual like huge value out of it pretty quickly. And it's just the pace of it's really fun, and I really like it.
Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I have a few decks that I would feel comfortable running at a higher power table. I'd say a lot of them are kind of at the mid-high level currently. The one that I'm working on, I've got it down to 100 cards, and I've play tested it, and I don't like where it's at right now. There are a few changes I still need to make to it, but it's getting close. It's AC, Tyrant of Gyre Strait, and I should definitely read this one for those who have not had the pleasure of playing against the Serpent. 4 green blue for a 5/5 Serpent. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, and then whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. So it's like Tatiova and Exploration stapled together into one card, which is really, really good. So this is a landfall combo deck. It runs an absurd number of combo lines. Really like 3, 4, 5 main lines, but there's a lot of redundancies within those lines because landfall cards play together so well. And so it's complex in the sense that there's a lot of different lines that you kind of have to keep in mind while you're playing and to keep an eye out for, so you know what you should be tutoring for, what you should win with. But in general, all of the combos only work with landfall. And so generally what you're trying to do is either put lands onto the battlefield an infinite number of times to trigger an infinite number of landfalls, and then from there have something like AC out that draws you your whole deck, or have something that creates tokens to create token creatures, and that's how it wins. So it's just playing a lot of stuff that cares about playing lands, which is really fun. I think landfall decks are really cool, but it was never a deck that I was really interested in building at a lower power. And so when I started to see a lot of the combo potential within landfall, I was like, oh yeah, this is like a high power deck that I want. Something that's very thematic, that focuses really hard on a single theme, and it lets me play a bunch of cool cards that I don't really want to be playing at other power levels. And I think it's really fun. It's also a fun opportunity to play a lot of cool lands that I don't play in any other decks that combo with cards in this deck. It's awesome. It's a whole lot of fun to play.
It's really cool, and I do think that like AC is an example of a commander that does want to be built at a higher power level.
Yeah.
At least for me, if I were to build like an AC deck,
so it was a precon. AC is a precon commander. I think it's only been printed in that precon, which is why it's like $27 right now. But I would say that precon has to be, if not the most powerful, one of the most powerful precons that Wizards has ever printed. A lot of it just because AC is really powerful, and land matters decks are inherently powerful because one of the things it cares the most about is just playing a lot of lands and ramping really hard, and that happens to be extremely powerful in Commander. So this already as a precon, you play this deck and you're like, this wants to be higher power. This does not feel like other precons.
Yeah, I think one thing notably for me with like commanders like AC who are like 6 mana, in a more casual game, I think you totally can play them lower power, and I think you can play them as lower power, but they feel like they want to be broken, right?
Yeah.
Like he's doing a really powerful thing in the command zone, and you can do that at lower powers, and you can play, but I would have to play cards that are explicitly very low power. Whereas if you power that up and you say, well, I'm going to play like Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt, I can get a turn 2 AC out and start getting value from it. I think that's when it starts to be I don't know, I think really, really cool.
Well, one of my other higher power decks is Mirim, who is also 6 mana. And with these kind of really busted, powerful, expensive commanders, I like playing them at higher power levels because I want to play them early in the game.
Yeah.
And ramping that quickly in a casual game, it has to be at higher power level or else it feels really bad.
Yes,
right?
And you want to protect them too, right? So you're running counter magic, and so if you're playing in a lower power
free
game,
counter magic.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it's I think they inherently become more fun to play as you start to play them at higher powers because they become more resilient.
Yep.
But if you've noticed, most of the commanders we're talking about right now represent very powerful engines or some sort of advantage piece in the command zone. And I do think those are commanders that generally want to be built. Maybe not want to be, but you can build them at higher power. Yeah, you can build them at higher power levels, and they will do quite well at higher power levels.
Yeah.
Higher power decks generally come down in the 99, and you'll generally see in high power decks higher quantities of interaction, more efficient interaction, like talk about free counter spells. Probably see more of those. More ramp, faster ramp, Jeweled Lotus, Mana Crypt, like Nature's Lore, 3 visits, which you'll see in like lower power casual as well, but just like things that will accelerate your game faster.
Yeah, like in lower power casual, the top end of my ramp is 3 visits and Nature's Lore.
Yeah.
In high power, that's the low end of my ramp.
Right, exactly.
I don't play anything worse than Nature's Lore and 3 visits.
Yes, exactly. You're gonna be playing more dorks and stuff so that you can. So on turn 2 you can play a Nature's Lore 3 visits or stuff like that. Yeah, and then they'll usually have more efficient card advantage like a Rhystic Study or Mystic Remoras, stuff like that. Kindred Discovery, which you should also play in low power decks, but does really well
Still
in
does
decks
in high power.
Yeah, exactly. Very well in high power, I think. And then we'll run like more efficient combos. Like I think I have in one of my lower power, notably probably my lowest power deck plays a combo that is relatively efficient, which is Sidri Galvanic Genius. It plays a 2-card combo which is Sidri, who is white, blue, black for a 2/2. You can pay 1 blue to turn a non-creature artifact into an artifact with power and toughness equal to its mana value, and then you can pay white, black to give a lifelink a death touch. So and then you play Aetherflux Reservoir, which notably has pay 50 life. Aetherflux Reservoir deals 50 damage to target player.
Yep.
So what you do is you need to get above 50 life, you turn it into a creature, you give it death touch and lifelink, and then you laser beam each player to death.
Because as lifelink, you pay the 50 life, it deals the damage, you get the 50 life back, and then you can do it again.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You do have to kind of be sneaky about getting above 50 life, because if you get 50 life while Aetherflux is out, people are going to be like, no.
Yeah.
But if you can kind of like sneak your way up there, then that is a deadly combo.
It's quite good.
Yeah.
It's a sweet combo. It's a 2-card combo. It's technically a 1-card combo because Sidri's in the command zone. Mm-hmm. But it's in my lowest power decks, and I don't have like tutors in it or anything. I just have to draw into it and still be above 50 life at the end of the game. In higher power decks, you are going to be playing more efficient combos. Garth, for example, plays combo lines with Displacer Kitten and a Haste Enabler, where I have to have Garth out, I have to have Displacer Kitten out, and a Haste Enabler, and then I can infinitely cast Black Lotus because I tap Garth, I cast a non-creature spell, Displacer Kitten bounces Garth, he enters untapped, and because I have a Haste Enabler, and it's a new instance of Garth, I can cast Black Lotus again.
Yep.
So you can...
You make infinite mana.
You make infinite mana, and then you can either Brain Geyser all of your opponents to death, so they draw their entire decks and then lose the game. Or you can draw your whole deck and try to find something else to win. Or
you can create infinite hasty Shivan dragons.
You can create infinite hasty Shivan dragons, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of different lines that you can do with it at the end. It is not the most efficient combo, but it's more efficient than combos you might see like in a lower power deck.
Like I have like lower power decks that have 4 or 5 card combos, which is like good luck assembling.
Right,
that.
exactly. And you're running tutors to like find them. It's pretty easy for me to find the pieces that I need.
I think that is part of what makes a deck higher power is that you not only have the combos, you also have the redundancy. Like you said, you play a 2-card, kind of a 1-card combo in a lower power casual deck, but there's no redundancy for that combo. If you happen to draw into it and you're able to pull it off, then you can do it. But in a lot of my higher power decks, I am running tutors because those act as redundancies for those combo lines and can get me the missing pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. So, down to brass tacks, who are some commanders that might do well as higher power, as the head of a higher power deck, the commander of a higher power deck?
Yep. We've talked about a couple of these already. Corvold, Fey Cursed King. There is a reason that he is a boogeyman in Casual Commander. It's an Aristocrats deck. It's very good as a treasure deck. Corvold makes treasures absurdly good. And you just win through sacrificing, getting really great value, a combo piece like Mayhem Devil that is dealing damage every time you sacrifice something. And a lot of times with Corvold, you can just kill somebody with commander damage because Corvold gets really, really big. He gets a lot of 1/1 counters on him.
Yeah, I think there are lines that you ping people to death. I don't know the specific combos of some of those lines, but it is like you're pinging people and he just generates so much advantage. You don't even need combos. You just draw naturally into really powerful
You're going to win through raw advantage. You're just going to be drawing so many more cards and creating so much more mana than anybody else at the table.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep.
Another one that I think does really well as a higher power commander is Muldrotha the Gravetide. This is an example of a commander. I'll read her really quick. 3 black, green, blue for a 6/6 legendary creature elemental avatar. During each of your turns, you may play a land and cast a permanent spell of each permanent type from your graveyard. So, 6 mana for a 6/6. Pretty expensive commander. I built this deck before. I've since taken it apart. I built it originally as a lower power deck. And I found that I'd play Muldrotha, and Muldrotha would get removed, and then cost 8 mana, and then 10 mana, and then I wasn't able to do anything with the stuff in my graveyard.
Yeah.
And so I naturally wanted to boost the power up, and I think that's a natural place for Muldrotha to go. And then you start to play things like Lotus Petal and some of the cheaper things that you can recur and get advantage from. You can play Jeweled Lotus, right? You get a Jeweled Lotus, you cast your Jeweled Lotus again.
Good.
It's awesome. It makes Muldrotha 3 mana. And then and then 5 mana the next time, right? Because you can cast it again the same turn you cast Muldrotha. So I think Muldrotha naturally wants to move up towards that higher power, and can move up fairly easily. And so Muldrotha is a very controlling deck. You play stuff like Aether Spellbomb and Seal of Removal.
I think it is Seal of Removal.
Yeah.
It feels too on the nose for a removal spell, but I'm pretty sure it's Seal of Removal.
It is Seal of Removal, each of which you can sacrifice to return a creature to its owner's hand, so you can just bounce your opponent's stuff, and they're artifact and enchantment separately, so you can bounce 2 things a turn cycle, which is pretty sweet, or protect Muldrotha. It's a very controlling kind of reanimator for any permanent type strategy, with several combo lines that are in it that are quite good. Yep. I think it's just very fun. You know, I'm a big nerd for Sultai.
And Reanimator specifically.
But I think it's a cool deck.
Yeah. Yeah, we already talked about the first sliver, but there are a lot of tribal decks that can be very good at a higher power, and Slivers is one of them. There's quite a few Slivers that have been printed, but there's quite a few that are just better than the others. So a lot of Sliver decks end up looking a little bit similar just because they run a lot of the same Slivers. But you just went through Slivers. I mean, I like I said, I have kind of like a mid-high power Sliver deck, and it can represent something like 40 to 60 damage on turn 6 or 7, which is quite a bit. I mean, it's not... That's why it's kind of mid to high, is because it still wins based on combat. I don't know of any combos in my deck, actually. I don't think there are any combos in my deck. But... So it's not as fast as some of the other higher power decks, but it ramps pretty quickly and it gets going pretty quickly.
Yeah, I would argue that it maybe is as fast as some of the other decks, but just wins on a different axis than some of the other decks.
Slower axis. It's not like a combo that wins you the game as soon as you play it. It's like, okay, I've got an army. Here in a couple turns, you're all dead.
Yeah, it folds to a board wipe significantly easier than some of the other ones do, for sure.
Yeah.
But it is like Kelton's saying, it's a high power deck, right? It's a typal deck that you can build at a higher power and still compete with some of these decks that just generate pure advantage and are playing on different, trying to build combos or whatever. 2 more. We want to talk about 2 more. We're going to talk about them in brief. Niv-Mizzet Perun. Very cool. Let me pull it up really quick. Niv-Mizzet Perun is blue, 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 red, red, red. So 6 total mana for a 5/5 legendary creature dragon wizard. This spell can't be countered. Oh, beautiful. Flying. Whenever you draw a card, Niv-Mizzet Perun deals 1 damage to any target. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. Very cool. Typical Izzet Spellslinger stuff. With a catch, Kelton, do you want to tell us how you win with this deck?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different enchantments and effects that you can use. Primarily Curiosity, which is whenever this creature deals damage, you get to draw a card. And so if you attach Curiosity to Niv-Mizzet and then you draw a card, it starts a loop of pinging your opponent, drawing a card, pinging your opponent, drawing a card, and going until all of your opponents are dead, or you don't have any cards left in your deck. But usually your opponents are all dead first. So this card wins very quickly with one other effect, of which there are multiple copies. There, I think, are 3 or 4 cards.
I think there are 3 of them. I think you're looking at Curiosity. I think you're looking at Ophidian Eye, which is the same thing for 2 more mana, and Tandem Lookout, which is a soulbond creature.
Yep. So all 3 of those can go on the deck. They all do the exact same thing. And so this deck can kind of win out of nowhere, especially because Curiosity is 1 mana.
Yeah. And Niv-Mizzet can't be countered.
And
you're playing blue-red and most likely playing a ton of counter
controlling
spells. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so this is a really great and pretty easy deck to build at a higher power. The last one we want to talk about is Elsha of the Infinite. I don't have much experience playing this deck. This is 2 blue, red, white for a 3/3 Djinn Monk with Prowess. You may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may cast non-creature spells from the top of your library. If you cast a spell this way, you may cast it as though it had Flash. So adding Flash on all these spells makes it much, much better. But I believe it's an artifacts deck, right, that wins through some comboing with some artifacts.
Yeah, I think there are some really sweet enchantments and sorceries as well that you can play in the deck. I have wanted to build this as a more casual deck.
But it's
so
hard.
Many times. But it's hard. It's really, really powerful. And it is kind of a lightning rod because it's very good. And these type of commanders, I think that's maybe how I want to say this. These commanders that are lightning rods, I want to build as higher power commanders because I want to be able to A, get them out faster with something like a Jeweled Lotus or a Mana Crypt, and I want to B, be able to protect them.
Yep.
I don't want to be waiting until turn 7 to cast Elsha to then have like a counter spell.
Yeah. All of the commanders on this list, I would consider lightning rods. They're ones that players know, if I do not remove this, I could lose next turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think naturally those are the ones that I want to play as higher power. And so Elsha falls in that category. Elsha notably does have a cEDH deck, some deck list that you can play. I just think it's a cool one. I think it's relatively easy to pilot. That was something we wanted to cover here. If you disagree with us about some of these, please let us know. But we wanted to choose commanders that are more easy to pilot for people who are trying to get into higher power and maybe play some of these like combo lines. Elsha is artifacts, enchantments, non-creatures, right? You're playing a lot of non-creatures, and you're trying to typically win through having Elsha on the field, Sensei's Divining Top, and a cost reducer for artifacts.
You can infinitely cast.
Yeah, so Sensei Divining Top is 1 mana for an artifact. I think it's a legendary artifact. I don't think it's a legendary artifact. I don't think it's
legendary. Yeah.
And you can pay 1 mana to look at the top 3 cards of your library and put them back in any order. And you can tap it to put it on top of your library. Elsha says you can cast those cards off top of your library, and if it's 1 mana less, it costs 0 mana. So you tap Sensei Divining Top, draw a card, put it on top of your library, cast it from the top for 0 mana, and you just draw through your entire deck, and then try to win.
And then win from there. Yeah. Once you've drawn your own entire deck, it should be pretty easy.
It's not too difficult to win that way.
That's awesome. Well, these are some high power casual commanders that we hope can get you started, something to start looking at. Though there are a lot of really cool commanders out there. So if you have a favorite high power casual commander, leave it in the comments. We'd love to know which decks you're playing and which decks you think that newer players to higher power casual might enjoy playing.
Yes, absolutely. Well, everybody, I think we're coming up on time here. We did want to talk this week about getting into cEDH and some commanders you might play at a cEDH table. But I think that's something we're going to have to move to talking about next week. We're so sorry to leave you hanging there. So
there was so much good stuff to talk about with higher power casual. It's just such a rich topic, and there's so much to distinguish between higher power and cEDH. So I'm glad that we took our time on it. So don't apologize, Spencer. There's more good content coming.
It's hard for me. I get so excited about talking about high power and cEDH that it's hard to not wax eloquent on those topics. Well, if you want to hear about cEDH, please subscribe, hit the notification button so that you can be notified of when that one does release. We're planning on doing that next week. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for liking, feeding the algorithm so that we can be seen by other people and by you. We have felt the support and we have loved it so much.
It's very validating. Yeah, we really appreciate it. And the best part is the comments and the engagement. So please keep that up because we really love to hear from you and we really love to respond back. We really love the discussion that's going on.
Yes, please. And keep requesting episodes. The past 2 episodes, if you've noticed, have been requested from users. And we have a list of episodes we want to do, but we will prioritize ones that we think are interesting that you want us to talk about. So
yeah, both of the topics from the last 2 weeks were already on the list, but because they were requested, we bumped them up to the top.
Yep, absolutely. So please subscribe, check us out next week. Check us out on YouTube if you're listening there. Check us out on Spotify. Tell your friends. Check us out on the Commander Pod. Thecommanderpod.com, I should say. That is our website. We're going to be adding more content to that. We think it's really fun. It's designed by Kelton, built by me. We're proud of it. We're going to be not to throw shade at any of the other podcasts out there, which we love and we support. But we think we
want to have the best website.
We think we've built the best one. So in the comments, let us know if there's anything we missed, anything you wish we would talk about. And until next week, remember to always pay the 1.